Om Shanti. How are you all? Happy Thanksgiving. So, you must have heard about the controversies surrounding Thanksgiving story. It all started in 1620 when a group of European settlers arrived at Plymouth and they had a very hard time because that was a freezing cold winter. So they had to seek the help of the Native Americans in order to learn how to fish, hunt, and grow plants. So they had a very good bonding initially. As a result, after a year in 1621, they had a very good harvest. So they wanted to celebrate that by celebrating a feast with Native Americans. So it was a 3 days feast. So it is believed if it were not for American tribes, the European settlers wouldn't have survived this long. So this is the story students read in their textbooks, but it is believed they have hidden the other part of the story where it went like after many years after celebrating the first Thanksgiving with Native Americans, many European settlers started colonizing the America, and they they were in disagreement with the native tribes in sharing the lands. So they actually killed native tribes in thousands by shooting them, by putting them on fire. So that is the reason till date Native Americans actually don't celebrate Thanksgiving on that day, but instead they mark that as a mourning day. As per history books of any country, it is pretty clear that European settlers misbehaved very badly with the residents of whatever land they enter. But I still believe not all European settlers would behave that badly, but the ones who were in the higher post might have behaved very badly. So this history of Thanksgiving reveals how humans enter the path of degradation as years pass by. The European settlers or pilgrims who were so loving in the beginning turned deadly afterwards. Though they come up with their own reason for calling them American Indians, but no matter which country they belong to, all the natives of all countries will definitely be Indians. So that is quite evident from their style of worship. So Hindus of India till date have this habit of worshipping nature. They worship fire, they worship sun. This is still followed by the native residents of all countries, including American Indians. So is it justifiable to add this horrific history of Thanksgiving in the textbooks? I don't think so, because already the hatred between whites and blacks is at its peak. So by adding this history into the textbooks will just add fuel into the fire. So it is not that all European settlers are bad naturally, but it is when they reach the highest status, when they have enormous amount of wealth, they get so intoxicated by those temporary possessions that they start behaving in a very bad, wild way. So this is the lesson that we should learn from them. We shouldn't use that to create hatred among communities. This holds true for any community. The reason for the Native Americans to carry that vengeance for centuries towards the European settlers is mainly because of the lack of spiritual knowledge about the soul. Because the original European settlers or pilgrims who actually launched the deadly attack on the American tribes will no longer be born to the um, the modern American community or European community. He may have been born even into the Native American community because the soul is capable of taking birth anywhere depending on its past karma. So it is because of the hatred we have over each other that the whole human community have lost all its glory now. Just because the initial European settlers were so loving to each other and with the people of other community, they were able to accumulate as much as they need to feed the other community as well within a year. But now, look at our condition. Now, we can't even feed ourselves if we, for some reason, uh, don't go to work for 6 months in a row. See the mindset of Native Americans who were actually welcoming immigrants. But look at the mindset now. We don't want anybody to come to our country, to come to our state. That's why, Trump built a huge wall to avoid immigrants. Why do they do it? Because of the lack of sources. Why do they get depleted of the sources? It is because of the hatred we have for each other. Just 3 days feast is quite surprising for us. But how about people of India 5,000 years back used to have feast with each other throughout the year. Actually, it continued for 2,500 years. How's that possible? Because we Indians were blessed with everything in abundance before 5,000 years. Because India was heaven. No, India was not like heaven, but it was indeed heaven. Actually, residents of India lived in houses built out of golden bricks. So you can imagine for yourself how healthy they would be initially. If having hatred is the reason that we are depleted of all the resources, then what would be the reason Indians possessed everything in abundance at the beginning? The answer lies in knowing about this time cycle that lasts for 5,000 years. This time cycle is called a kalpa. So the first 2,500 years would be heaven and the last 2,500 years would be hell. Just like day and night continuously exist, so is the cycle of 5,000 years that constitutes both hell and heaven. So it would be heaven in the beginning, followed by hell, again it's followed by heaven, and it just goes on unstoppingly. So it is because of our hatred towards each other due to various reasons that we have lost everything. We have lost our health, wealth, and we have started getting peculiar diseases year after year, and we are not at peace with our neighbors, we are not at peace even with our own family members, and the nations are not at peace with each other, so they prepare themselves to destroy the enemy using deadly weapons like nuclear bombs. And that is how this world will eventually be destroyed. But the soul, doesn't get destroyed at all. So actually that is the essence of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So God says, though soul is imperishable, soul is capable of becoming dirty due to you committing more and more sinful acts. So, but the soul that entered heaven in the beginning were as pure as God Himself. By pure, it means the soul doesn't have any knowledge about the five vices such as lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. So even they give birth to the young ones by just having a thought of having a baby. That's how the wife gets pregnant. They don't lust for each other. They don't know what lust is. They don't know what greed is. They don't know what anger is. They were as pure as a newborn baby. That is why even in Bible, Jesus Christ says that unless you become as pure as a newborn baby, you could not enter heaven. So how do we go back to heaven? So it is very interesting to know that the answer lies in the recent tradition followed by American presidents in pardoning the Turkish. So they say, I forgive you of all the sins and I decide to let you free. So they say this to the Turkish. Likewise, if you are able to forgive anybody who has caused you harm in your past, present, or in your past births, if you are ready to let them free, so that is the number one character that is required to enter heaven. That is how people start taking birth in heaven again. So that is what is actually implied in Bible when Jesus said that one should show the other cheek when somebody hits you on one cheek, which means you should be ready to forgive your enemy and also you should be ready to take even more harm that is going to be aimed at you by your enemy. Nonetheless, you are ready to forgive them and let them go. But how is that possible? Because the kind of mistreatment that we receive from the people makes us behave so cruelly back at them. So how is it possible for us to have the strength to forgive all the faults? So that can only be achieved by increasing the soul power, because the soul that entered heaven was so powerful, which is the main reason that it had no traces of any vice. But as time passes, after taking several rebirths, the soul gradually loses its power, which is how, after the first 2500 years, the five vices started slowly to emerge from us. It is due to the lack of power. So how do one fill their souls with power? So the only way to do that is to remember the Almighty Authority, God, who is also a soul, which is why he is called Supreme Soul. He is called God Shiva by Hindus, Allah by Muslims, Heavenly Godfather by Christians. God is just one. The only difference between God and all the other souls is we enter birth and death cycle that lasts for 5000 years, while God stays away from this birth and death cycle. Nonetheless, he enters this world 100 years before the destruction of this world. He enters an old man's body and start giving this knowledge that actually converts us from an ordinary human being into deity. So how does he achieve that? By giving the knowledge through the mouth of an old man called Brahma. So That knowledge is available absolutely free of cost in all Brahma Kumaris Rajyog meditation centers in the form of Murli. So it is available in all languages. You can also find it online in many websites and several YouTube channels. I'll be giving the links of some of them. You can also Google it yourself. So how do we fill our souls with power? By remembering God as a point of light, and also by considering ourselves to be the imperishable soul that shines like a tiny star in between the eyebrows, which is why Hindus have this habit of wearing religious symbols in between the eyebrows. So it is the soul that sees, speaks, and performs all actions with the help of this body, but we are not this body. While in heaven, we are absolutely soul conscious, which means we considered ourselves to be the soul constantly, which is why we experienced eternal bliss, because the true nature of the soul itself is blissfulness. But after the first 2500 years, we can no longer stay blissful because we were not soul conscious anymore. We became body conscious, because of which we started getting addicted to sensual pleasures, thereby all these 5 vices pop up. That's how we started committing more and more sins, because of which we are being punished by becoming poor and inflicted with many diseases. So the only way to escape from all the sufferings that we endure now is to constantly remember God as a point of light by considering ourselves to be the soul. So the more we remain soul conscious and remembering God as a point of light, our souls gets filled with more and more power that is needed for us to get the strength to stay out of those 5 vices. Actually, all religious festivals in Hinduism is actually a thanksgiving on its own term, because Hindus have this habit of worshipping deities who are actually the residents of heaven. So it is the same residents of heaven, deities, after taking several rebirths, become ordinary humans who become worshippers and start worshipping the deities which were actually originally them, but they forget that. The reason I say worshipping deities is a form of thanksgiving is because if there were no deities, if nobody made effort at the end of Kalpa to become as pure as God and make themselves eligible to enter heaven, there would be no heaven, there would be no treasure. So though the world gets slowly depleted of its treasures, but it was still made as heaven due to the subtle effort we make by being in remembrance of God and by staying away from all those 5 vices and to stay absolutely pure. So we have been enjoying the benefits of heaven for 5000 years. So we have used everything, and also because of our sinful behavior, we have lost many of the resources of this earth. That's why we are suffering. So now it's not enough to be thankful to the deities, but instead it is time now for us to become deities again and to bring heaven on earth again. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody.